Rachel Lane didn't know his name, just that he was drunk, bleeding, and paid her in hundreds. She thought she was dropping off another reckless club executive, not the man half the city feared. He slurred an address. She drove through rain and sirens, pretending not to hear the way he whispered threats to ghosts. When she left him at the gates of that mansion, she thought it was over. It wasn't. Thanks for being here. If you're enjoying the story, hit subscribe and drop a comment telling me where you're from. I've got another great story coming tomorrow that you won't want to miss. Rain lashed against the windshield like claws trying to peel the night open. The wipers groaned back and forth, smearing streaks across the glass, but Rachel didn't slow down. She had exactly 2 more hours on the clock before she needed to get home, catch 4 hours of sleep, and get her son ready for school. That meant 2 more rides, maybe 3 if they were short. She didn't take off-app jobs often, too many horror stories. But this one had been simple. Cash, good tip promised, pick up outside some upscale club in the financial district. She was already nearby, and the rain meant surge pricing wouldn't help her anyway. She tapped the hazard lights and pulled up to the curb, engine purring. Then he stumbled out. The man was half falling out the back exit of the club, 2 bouncers behind him arguing in Italian. He didn't walk so much as sway, slouched in an expensive black overcoat already soaked at the shoulders. A splash of red smeared one side of his shirt. Blood, maybe. Rachel stiffened but didn't unlock the doors until he looked up. Even in the rain through the window, she could see his eyes. They weren't wide or panicked like someone who got stabbed in a bar fight. They were calm, flat. A kind of rage pressed so deep behind them it had frozen over into something cold and impossible to read, like whatever hurt him had already been buried beneath 100 worse things. He opened the door without asking, got in, collapsed against the seat, bleeding onto leather she still hadn't paid off. "You all right?" she asked without turning. He didn't answer, just dropped a heavy, soaked wallet on the center console. $100 bills were sticking out of it, crumpled and damp. "Address?" she asked again, more sharply. He exhaled, then murmured a set of numbers, a street in a part of the city where no one rented anything under 10 grand a month. She didn't ask again, just shifted into drive and merged into the street, wipers protesting all the way. In the rear view, she could see him lean his head back, eyes fluttering. He muttered something under his breath. Italian again, maybe Latin. She didn't catch it all, but she heard the words liars and traitor. And once, just once, he hissed, "I should have killed you myself." She should have turned around, should have left him there. But the money sat on her, dash like a promise, like survival. Rent was due in 4 days. Her son's shoes were falling apart. So she drove 30 minutes, through police sirens and flooded intersections. The man didn't speak again. Once he opened his eyes and looked at her in the mirror. Rachel pretended not to notice. When she pulled up to the gates of the mansion, not a house, not even an estate, but a walled-off compound behind iron and glass, he stirred. "This is it?" she asked. He nodded slowly, then shoved the wad of bills into her glove compartment and got out without a word. Rachel waited until the gates closed behind him. The rain turned to mist, and then she drove away. The next morning, she woke to silence. Then something worse. 2 black SUVs were parked across the street. At first, she thought it was coincidence. People in the building had money sometimes. Retirees, hustlers, even an Instagram model on the 3rd floor who got sent PR boxes weekly. But these SUVs weren't there last night, and both were still running. She peered out through the blinds and cursed quietly. Her son, Matteo, was still brushing his teeth in the bathroom. She kept the volume down and moved back into the kitchen, pretending to make coffee, watching the cars in the reflection of the microwave door. She took a picture, sent it to her friend Kara, who responded with, "Girl, that's cartel-grade weird." Rachel stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Something in her stomach was turning. Not fear exactly. Something colder. Something like a warning. That man. The one from last night. She didn't even have a name, no app record, no number. He'd paid cash, vanished behind gates, and she'd told herself he was just some hedge fund executive with enemies and a god complex. But now her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She dropped Mateo off at school and tried to ignore the car that pulled away from the curb 5 seconds later. She drove around for an hour, picked up a Starbucks delivery, got another app ping from a group of club kids going back to their hotel. But she couldn't focus. Every time she checked the rearview mirror, a black sedan seemed to flicker behind her. Not the same one, not always close, but enough. When she finally got home, the envelope was waiting. No name, no return address. Just a black package on her doorstep, perfectly centered like it had been placed by a machine. Inside was a cell phone and $10,000 in hundreds. Rachel didn't call the cops. She wanted to. Her hand hovered over the landline twice. Not the cell, never the cell. But some deep-rooted instinct made her stop. She'd seen things, driven people through parts of the city where police response times were measured in hours. She knew what it meant to get involved with money that moved in silence. She powered on the phone. It blinked. One message. "You did me a favor. You're owed protection. Don't panic." She dropped the phone like it burned. The screen stayed lit, white text glowing like a curse. That night she locked all 3 bolts, moved a chair in front of the door, let Mateo sleep in her room, kept the TV on. Every sound made her flinch. At 2:14 a.m., the power went out. Not the whole building, just her unit. She stood in the hallway, breath frozen. The hallway lights were still on outside. Apartment 2B had music playing. Someone on the 5th floor was running water. But her stove, microwave, fridge, all of it, dead. The phone buzzed. She hadn't touched it, hadn't gone near it. But the light glowed across the kitchen counter now, like it had always been waiting. "I need to speak to you." She didn't answer. She didn't sleep. By the time the sun broke through the storm clouds the next morning, Rachel had made a decision. If he came back, she would slam the door in his face. But when he came back, she couldn't move. It was just past 6, Mateo gone at school when the knock came. Not loud, not angry. 3 short taps. Rachel opened the door with the chain on and stared into the eyes of the man she'd driven home 2 nights ago. He looked nothing like he had then. Sober, clean, suit tailored, not crumpled. The wound on his side was stitched and covered. His eyes, though, still like ice water, still staring at her like she was already a memory. "You saw me," he said calmly. "That's a problem." Rachel shut the door, didn't even hesitate. 3 seconds later, the power in her apartment went out. Again. The door was still warm from her palm when the lights blinked out again. Rachel's heart kicked once, hard in her chest. Everything in her apartment went silent. Fridge hum, heater clank, the faint electrical buzz of the old lamp in the corner. Gone. Just like the night before. Just like after she slammed the door. She didn't move for a full minute. The phone on her counter lit up. The one he gave her. Still untouched. Still unclaimed. Buzz. A message. "That was rude, Rachel." D. She backed away, hand tightening around her house keys. She wasn't built for this. She was built for staying alive, for hustling rides and making rent, and counting down how long until Mateo needed new sneakers again. Not this. Not Mafia bosses in her hallway, not surveillance-grade phones that knew her name. She grabbed her coat, purse, backup keys, cash from the tip jar. The phone buzzed again. "Don't run." She opened the front door without a sound and sprinted down the hall. The elevator was dead. Of course it was. She took the stairs 2 at a time, slamming the exit door open and bolting through the back alley behind the building. No sign of black SUVs, no strange men with earpieces. Not yet. She made it 2 blocks before she saw the sedan. Same dark tint, same parking pattern, different car, same message. Rachel ducked into a corner store and faked a phone call. Her fingers shook as she browsed gum and painkillers. When she finally paid for nothing but a pack of mints, she caught the clerk giving her that look. The "what trouble are you in" look. She didn't answer, didn't owe anyone anything. Outside, the car was gone. But her skin itched with knowing. It got worse after her shift. Her rideshare route ended late. A family from the airport, then a quiet businessman who never looked up from his phone. Normal, uneventful, safe. Until she reached the last street and saw it again. Not a car this time, but a man standing across from her apartment. Dark coat, too still, watching. She didn't go home. Instead, she drove loops around the block until her fuel light blinked and her eyes burned. She found a 24-hour diner and parked in back, watching the cameras, windows locked. She only went home after sunrise. The man was gone, but the phone was flashing again. One new message: "We need to talk, or your son's school will get new security personnel you didn't approve." She dropped the phone. An hour later, the school called. A man claiming to be family security had visited the front office. He said he was verifying Rachel Lane's emergency contact info, said it was a mistake in their new system. She hadn't authorized anyone, hadn't told anyone anything. Her voice shook as she lied, told the secretary it must have been a misunderstanding and that Mateo's info was private. The secretary apologized. Rachel didn't even hear it. Her ears were ringing. She stayed awake until sunset. Then, like some bad movie cue, he came back. No knock this time. Just a shadow under her door. A sense. When she opened it, he stood there, still cold, still silent. But this time, he wasn't bleeding. He wasn't drunk. And he wasn't smiling. "I don't want trouble," Rachel said, hand braced against the door. "Then don't invite it," Dorian said quietly. She stared at him. "You're the one showing up at my home, my kid's school." His eyes flickered. That was the first crack, the first glimpse of something beneath the ice. "I made sure no one would hurt your son," he said. "You made sure I couldn't sleep," she shot back. "You're threatening me because I gave you a ride home." "No," he said, voice dropping. "I'm protecting you because you gave me a ride home. There's a difference." Rachel narrowed her eyes. "You saw me," he continued, stepping a little closer. "You drove me bleeding through half the city. You dropped me at my house. Do you know how many enemies I have, Rachel? Do you understand what kind of people would have had you on a slab within the hour just to send me a message? I don't care. You should." She slammed the door again. This time, the lights stayed on. The next morning, she found an envelope taped to her steering wheel. No name, no instructions, just a single key, and a tag with one word: trust. The landlord knocked 3 hours later, apologetic, nervous, avoiding eye contact. "Rachel, I need to ask you to move out." She blinked. "What?" "There's concern. Someone saw suspicious vehicles outside. Building management thinks it's best if you relocate. For safety." Her blood went cold. "How long do I have?" "A day or two." "No notice?" He hesitated. "It's not me. I'm sorry. It's above me now." Rachel didn't argue. She already knew who was behind it. She took Mateo to her sister's for the night. Didn't explain much. Just said work got complicated and they needed a little distance. Her sister didn't press. Too used to Rachel holding the world up on her own. She came back alone, stared at the key, then the message, then the envelope, then she packed. The address wasn't one she knew. The key had no tag, no number, nothing official. But when she arrived, a valet stepped out from the shadows. No name, just a nod. Then the gates opened and the building swallowed her car like it had been waiting all along. Inside was silence. No front desk, no residents, no noise. Just polished floors, high ceilings, and the faintest smell of eucalyptus and steel. The key fit perfectly. She entered the unit and froze. The apartment was huge, not flashy, not like a penthouse, but cold, clean, surveillance level, sterile. Every corner perfectly arranged, minimal furniture, black and white decor, no clutter, no life. but there were groceries in the fridge, toys in the guest room. Someone had prepared it for her. Her son's name was written on a sticky note next to a stack of books. Ones he liked, ones he already had at home. She turned to leave, and that's when she saw it. The camera, tiny, embedded in the smoke detector, blinking once. And the phone. Not her phone. A new one. Buzzing. She picked it up. The screen lit up before she touched it. A message. Don't go outside after dark. Rachel moved to the window, breathing shallow. Below her, the street was silent. But when she looked up, just across from her, a man stood on a rooftop with a sniper rifle aimed. Not at her. At someone else. 2 blocks down, a second man moved with a weapon drawn, unaware. The sniper waited, then fired. The second man dropped. Rachel stumbled back, hand over her mouth. The phone buzzed again. Now, do you understand? Rachel didn't sleep that night. She paced the apartment like a cornered animal, windows darkened, phone muted, cameras ignored. The image of the sniper haunted her. Not just the shot itself, but how calmly it had happened. 1 second, there was a man walking below. The next, he was on the ground, a ghost in a city of shadows. The message still pulsed on the burner phone's screen. Now, do you understand? She understood one thing. She wasn't in control anymore. The next morning, she stepped outside, for the first time since the sniper incident. Only to be followed. It wasn't subtle. 2 men in suits leaned against a black SUV parked across the street. When she crossed the sidewalk, they crossed too. Not close, just enough to remind her they were there. Watching. Rachel cut through an alley, stopped suddenly, and turned. "Are you with him?" she snapped. Neither man answered, but she saw the comms in their ears, the stiff posture, the way one's eyes flicked to her waist, checking for a weapon. "Tell your boss he can keep his thugs and his phones. I'm not his charity case. I'm not his—" The one on the left stepped forward, low voice calm. "We're not here to harm you, Miss Lane. You're stalking me. We're protecting you. From what?" That made him pause. Then he said, "From what saw you with him that night." Rachel took the subway instead of driving. She pulled her hoodie up and sat with her arms crossed, bouncing one leg anxiously. At every stop, she checked to see who got on. When she finally arrived at the daycare to pick up Mateo, she was 15 minutes early. And the first thing she saw was a car idling across the street. Not a black SUV this time, a white sedan. Plain, subtle, government-style subtle. She didn't like it. The daycare receptionist gave her a nervous smile when she asked about visitors. Actually," the girl said, "someone came by earlier. Said they were your cousin. Wanted to check Mateo's allergies?" Rachel's blood froze. She nodded like she understood, grabbed her son, and walked straight out without another word. By nightfall, she was back in the apartment. Not home. Never home. Just the place she'd been given. The cage dressed in modern furniture. She found a second camera in the bathroom vent. That was the last straw. She grabbed her coat and stormed out. She found him at a rooftop lounge downtown. Dorian Vale, Mafia boss, Shadow King, the man who bled in her back seat like a dying prince. He sat alone at the far end of a private table, drink in hand, suit pressed so clean it looked ironed onto his skin. Bodyguards flanked the exits. But he didn't look surprised when she arrived. He looked like he'd been expecting her. "You had my kid's school watched?" she snapped. He didn't look up. Someone else was already watching it. "Then why send your men? Why scare the staff? Why follow me with cars I can't lose unless I take the damn subway?" His eyes flicked to her, slow and surgical. "You're under surveillance because the moment you drove me home, you entered a war zone. You just didn't know it yet. I didn't ask to be in your world. No one ever does." Rachel leaned in. "Then let me out." "I can't. Try harder." He smirked. "Barely. Do you know how many people wanted to know who drove me that night? Who got close enough to see blood on my shirt and Livy?" Rachel said nothing. "You're not being stalked," he said. "You're being protected from men who see you as leverage. You helped me while I was vulnerable. That makes you dangerous." To who? To everyone. She left without touching her drink. He didn't stop her. But as she exited, a man at the edge of the building took a photo of her. She turned too late. He was already gone. She didn't go home. Not right away. Instead, she drove. She called her sister, asked about Mateo, told her she might need to stay a few more days. No, it wasn't anything serious, just work. She hung up fast. She went to her old apartment building just to feel the concrete of a familiar place. It had police tape on the front entrance. She asked the deli owner downstairs what happened. "Someone broke into Unit 302, he said. "Gunshots, no one found. They left through the fire escape." That was her unit. Rachel sat in her car, staring at the taped-off stairwell. The deli owner tapped her window. "Hey," he said, "that was your place, right?" She nodded, numb. He handed her an envelope. "Guy in a suit said to give you this." Inside was a note. "They're getting close. Stop pretending this isn't real." She drove back to the apartment with shaking hands, found the third camera in her son's bedroom. She sat on the edge of the bed and cried for the first time in months. Not because of fear, not because of the man watching her, but because she no longer knew which direction was safe. And Dorian Vale, for all his menace, was the only one who hadn't lied to her yet. That night, her landlord sent a final text. "Lock changed. Unit released. Sorry." Just like that, her old life disappeared. She curled on the couch, staring at the ceiling vent, where the lens blinked like a heartbeat. The phone buzzed again. "You're safer where you are. Don't fight it." She didn't answer, but she didn't leave either. The door didn't have a lock, not one she could see. Rachel ran her fingers along the smooth metal frame again. No deadbolt, no keyhole, just a black panel near the handle that blinked once when she touched it. The sound it made was mechanical, quiet, like the hiss of something deeper unlocking. She tried to wedge a chair under it anyway. The chair slid. The floor was polished too smooth. The door didn't budge. Of course it didn't. She was in an apartment with no lease, no buzzer, no address on Google Maps. Just a key someone slipped her without asking, and an apartment stocked with everything she never told anyone she needed. Her son's favorite cereal, her brand of shampoo, a toothbrush in Mateo's size. None of it made her feel safer. It made her feel watched. She found the fourth camera above the fridge. She yanked it out. The lens snapped free like a bug crushed between her fingers. She didn't even feel better after. The new phone blinked again. She hadn't touched it all day, had left it buried in a drawer under a pile of dish towels, but it still buzzed at the exact moment the sun dipped below the skyline. "Don't go outside after dark." Rachel stared at it, then walked to the window. Below, the street was empty. No cars, no pedestrians, no headlights slicing through the dusk, just the cold quiet that came with money and surveillance. But across the street, not directly, not obviously, a figure moved on a rooftop. Same silhouette, same rifle. Only now, he wasn't aiming. He was watching. Not her. Something else. Rachel backed away from the window and slammed the blinds shut. Later, after she put Mateo to sleep, she opened the drawer and stared at the burner phone again. There were 3 new messages. "You're secure. The breach at your old building was not random. You're not under threat here, but don't invite any." She didn't respond, but she didn't throw the phone away either. The next morning was worse. There were no elevators in the building, no lobby, just her apartment, a hallway and a stairwell that looped forever downward, all chrome and glass and eerily quiet. She descended 23 flights before she realized she hadn't passed a single door, not one other apartment, not even an exit sign. When she hit the bottom level, the stairwell opened into a parking garage. Her car was waiting there, full tank, washed. She didn't remember leaving it. She drove Mateo to school. No tail this time, no SUV, no white sedans. But there was a van parked across the street. Landscaping company, logo painted crooked, engine off. She walked Mateo inside, kissed his forehead, then returned to the sidewalk and waited. 40 minutes. No one came in or out of the van. She approached, knocked once. The driver inside didn't look at her. He just pulled out a phone and pressed a single button. A black SUV pulled around the corner exactly 27 seconds later. Dorian's voice came through the passenger window before it even rolled down. "You're not very subtle." Rachel crossed her arms. "Neither are you." He stared at her for a long time. He wasn't wearing a suit today, just dark jeans and a jacket, but he still looked like the kind of man who'd command a room without raising his voice. "You're being watched because someone put a price on your location. The man who broke into your old apartment? He wasn't just looking for me." "So now what?" she asked. "You trap me in some spy bunker and pretend it's a favor." "It's not a bunker," he said. "It's a buffer." "From what?" Dorian leaned forward, eyes colder than the wind. "From a world that turns anyone I touch into bait." She flinched before she could help it. He saw. She didn't go back to the apartment immediately. Instead, she drove to a public library and used the Wi-Fi to search the address Dorian had given her. The building she now lived in. Nothing came up. No listings, no permits, no tax records, not even a ghost address, like it had been erased from every map. She searched Dorian Vale next. One result, an old article. 10 years ago. A business merger between two shipping companies. The article listed his name as a board member. Dorian Vale, 29, interim chairman after his father's death. Nothing since. No photos, no interviews, no records. A man who lived in a city without ever being in it. That night, another envelope appeared. Not in the mailbox. Not under her door. Just on her kitchen counter. She froze. The cameras, the apartment, the surveillance. Someone had been inside while she was out. Inside the envelope was a printed photo. Not of her. Of Mateo, in the schoolyard. Smiling, backpack crooked. The image was grainy, from a distance, taken through a scope. The phone buzzed before she could panic. That's what protection looks like. D, she called him. First time. The line didn't even ring. He picked up on the first breath. "Rachel," he said, "you think this is protection?" Her voice was shaking. "You think sending me sniper photos of my child is reassurance?" "It was a warning." "Of what?" "That someone else had a lens on him, too. Mine got there first." Rachel's knees buckled. She sat on the floor. "How long does this last?" she whispered. He didn't answer immediately. Then, "Until you're not useful to them anymore." "To who?" "To the ones that would hurt you just to draw me out." Later, she found a second phone in her coat pocket. It hadn't been there before. It had one contact, no name, just an initial, D. She stared at it for a long time, then tucked it into her drawer with the other. She didn't throw it out. A day passed, then 2. No messages, no knocks, no envelopes. She let Mateo watch cartoons, ordered groceries with cash, kept her head down. For the first time, she felt the silence as a gift. And then, on the third night, she found the photo. Not one someone sent her. One she never took. It was on the apartment's living room screen, triggered somehow when she turned the TV on. It showed her, sleeping, same couch, same blanket, from above. Dorian had said she was safe. She believed him, but only because the man watching her needed her alive more than he needed her gone. That wasn't protection. That was possession. Rachel hadn't left the apartment in 3 days, not because she was scared, at least not in the usual sense. It wasn't terror that kept her inside. It was something colder, something deeper, the kind of instinct that says, stay quiet, stay still, survive. It wasn't a home. It was a cage lined with her favorite things. The illusion of comfort was the most dangerous part. The invitation came at 6 p.m. on a Wednesday. Not a message, not a knock, just a soft ding. And when Rachel checked the front door, the security panel was blinking green, unlocked. Another ding. She opened the door. A small silver tray sat on the hallway floor. A single card rested on top. Her name, handwritten. Inside, "You're already on my grid. You might as well eat on it. Dinner, 8 p.m., my place, 41st floor, D." She stared at the card like it might burn, then closed the door and locked it again, even though she knew it didn't make a difference. She didn't plan on going. Not at first. She told herself it was a power move, staying in, ignoring him, keeping distance. But something clawed at her all night, an itch beneath her skin, a truth she hadn't wanted to name yet. She wanted answers, not from the men watching her, not from the silence, from him. Dorian Vale, the man who bled in her back seat like a curse and now moved through her life like gravity. So at 7:57, she changed. Not into anything special, just clean jeans, boots, a navy sweater, armor, more than style. She left Mateo asleep, texted her sister to stay on standby just in case, and took the elevator for the first time. Floor 41 blinked like it was always waiting for her. The doors opened into silence. No hallway, no other units, just a vast open space. Part penthouse, part fortress, flooded with warm light and the smell of rosemary and garlic. She stepped inside. The door closed behind her without a sound. Dorian was in the kitchen. No guards, no suit, no weapon in sight. He was wearing a black Henley shirt, sleeves pushed to the elbow, chopping something on a wooden board like this was just Tuesday night. He didn't look up. "You came," he said. "I didn't say yes." "You didn't say no." She stepped further in. The apartment was too perfect. Clean without being sterile, expensive without being gaudy. There were signs of life here. Books stacked on side tables, a half-finished drink by the window, a coat tossed carelessly on a leather chair. He wasn't pretending to be normal. He just was. That made it worse. "Why dinner?" she asked. He tossed vegetables into a simmering pan. "You don't respond to texts. You ignore surveillance. I thought food might be harder to resist." "It's not a date." His mouth twitched. "Wasn't planning on proposing." He plated the food in silence. 2 bowls, pasta, roasted vegetables, something that smelled way too good for someone who spent his nights ordering threats and bodies like Amazon packages. He slid one across the island to her. Rachel didn't move. "I want answers," she said. Dorian nodded once. "Fair." "I want to know why I'm still involved, why you can't just erase the footage, wipe my name, let me go." He leaned against the counter. "Because I remember you." She blinked. "You were barely conscious." "I was bleeding, out, drunk, hunted, and you were calm." "So?" He stared at her, eyes sharp. "So, that's rare. That kind of calm, in chaos, that sticks." She looked away. "You didn't flinch," he continued. "Didn't ask who I was, didn't call the cops. You drove like you'd done it before." "I've driven a lot of people." "Not like me." She finally picked up the bowl. Didn't eat, just held it. "Is that why I'm still alive?" she asked. His answer was immediate. "No, that's why I'm still watching." Rachel's chest tightened. She wanted to be furious, wanted to throw the bowl at his head and walk out. But instead, she asked, "Why me?" He exhaled. "Because you saw me," he said. "Not the headlines, not the suit, not the ghost stories. You saw me bleeding, drunk, broken. And you didn't treat me like I was dangerous. You treated me like I was human." She didn't respond. The silence grew thick between them. Then he added, "I regret one thing about that night." She met his gaze. "What?" "That I didn't remember your name." Dinner passed quietly. They ate across from each other like strangers sharing a storm shelter. Not enemies, not friends. Something more unstable. She didn't ask about his past. He didn't ask about her son. But the tension had shifted, like a weight between them had settled, not lifted. When she stood to leave, he didn't stop her. Not at first. But at the door, he said, "You're not just a driver anymore, Rachel." She turned slowly. "You're a variable," he said. "That's harder to control." She stared at him. "Is that a threat?" "No," he said. "It's a fact." She went back to the apartment and stood in the dark kitchen for 20 minutes. No new messages, no cameras blinking. But she knew something had changed. He had moved from the shadows into the center of her story, and she had let him. Later that night, after Mateo fell asleep again, she found a new phone message, not from Dorian's burner line, a new number, unfamiliar, just 2 words. "We saw you." The message echoed louder than it read. "We saw you." Rachel stared at the words on the burner phone. No name, no number, just that simple sentence, pulsing on the screen like a heartbeat. She deleted it, then turned the phone off and ripped the battery out for good measure. But the feeling didn't go away. Somewhere out there, someone had watched her walk into Dorian Vale's penthouse. Someone who wasn't him, and now they wanted her to know it. The next morning, she packed a bag, not a dramatic, tear-filled movie scene kind of packing. Just quiet, focused, mechanical. 2 changes of clothes, Mateo's medical records, her stash of emergency cash, the fake IDs she'd bought years ago from a guy in Long Beach who swore he did freelance for clients who wanted to disappear. Rachel never thought she'd actually use them. But that was before she met the man who treated city power grids like toys and deadbolts like decorations. She left Mateo with her sister again, said nothing, just hugged him tight and whispered she'd be back soon. Then she got in the car and drove. Her plan was simple: get out of the city, change her name, start over. She had enough gas to make it 3 states over and enough fear to keep driving past that. The roads were quiet. No one followed her. For the first 30 miles, she started to believe it might actually work. But somewhere past the edge of downtown, her GPS began to act strange. The screen glitched, then rerouted. She ignored it, kept going. It rerouted again. Off the highway this time. She turned the volume down, disconnected the Bluetooth. Still, the map kept flashing the same message. Turn right. She didn't. So the streetlights ahead turned red. All of them. Every single one. She stopped the car in the middle of the road and looked around. Empty. No one behind her. No one in front. But she knew. He was watching. She pressed the gas and tried to outrun it. Made it 4 more exits before her engine stalled. Not overheated, not broken. Just dead. She coasted to the shoulder. The dashboard lit up with unfamiliar codes. Then the display blacked out. A full system failure. She sat there for 10 minutes, breath fogging the windshield, fingers curled around the steering wheel like it might anchor her to a world that wasn't crumbling. Then the black SUV pulled up beside her. The window rolled down. Dorian Vale didn't look angry. He looked bored. "Did you get it out of your system?" he asked calmly. Rachel didn't answer. He got out and opened her passenger door like he did this every day. "Let's go," he said. She stayed seated. "Did you do this?" she asked. "The GPS, the car, the streetlights." He raised an eyebrow. "You already know the answer." She turned toward him, eyes blazing. "You're insane." He didn't flinch. "And you're stubborn." "I'm trying to protect my son." "So am I." She slapped him. The sound cracked in the quiet. Dorian didn't react, didn't touch his face, didn't move at all. Instead, he said, "Next time you run, I'll give you something worth running from." She sat in the SUV, didn't speak the whole drive. He didn't either. But his words stayed with her. Not because they were threatening, because they weren't. Back at the apartment, everything was exactly how she left it, except for the note on the kitchen counter. Typed, folded, sealed. She opened it with shaking hands. There are rules in this world. You think you're protecting your son by hiding, but hiding doesn't make the wolves go away. It just makes you easier to grab. If you want out, you have to walk through the fire, not run from it. D. She threw the note away, then pulled it out of the trash 3 minutes later and read it again. Later that night, the city glowed outside her window. Rachel stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, watching the skyline like it was a ticking bomb. And maybe it was. She thought of Mateo's drawings taped to the fridge, of the sniper photo, of the message, "We saw you," of the way Dorian said, "You're a variable," like it was a truth he couldn't unlearn. She called him. First ring, then he answered. "I'm not built for this," she said, not even sure what that meant anymore. "No one is," he said. "You've got the whole city under your thumb. I was forced to." "I'm not you," she whispered. "No," Dorian said, "but you drove me through hell without blinking. That counts for something." She wanted to hang up. Instead, she said, "What happens next?" There was a long pause. Then, "I test your limits." The next morning, she found a new key. This one wasn't to the apartment. It was labeled Panic Room. There was also a folder beside it. Photos, surveillance, dossiers, people she didn't recognize, all marked with red X's and blacked out names. At the bottom, one note in handwriting she didn't know. "If they get in, use the room. If I don't make it in time, use the gun." There was no gun in the folder, but she knew there was one in the apartment now, somewhere. That night, the lights flickered and stayed off. Not just in her apartment this time, in the building. The power grid failed. The emergency backup kicked in 5 seconds later. The cameras buzzed to life. The phone blinked. One new message. "Get Mateo. Lock the room. Don't open it unless I tell you." Rachel grabbed her son and ran. The panic room wasn't hidden, just discreet, behind a door that looked like a closet but opened with a fingerprint scanner. Hers worked. Inside, the room was small. Metal walls, 2 oxygen vents, monitors, a tablet, water, blankets, and a lock that slid shut with a hiss that felt permanent. Mateo asked, "Mom, are we okay?" She wrapped him in her arms. "Yes, baby, we're okay." The tablet screen flickered on. A live feed. Cameras. One showed the front of the building. 3 men breaching the door. Guns drawn. She couldn't breathe. Another feed showed Dorian stepping into the lobby. No hesitation. Gun already raised. 2 shots. The first man dropped. The second reached for something. He didn't finish. Dorian didn't flinch. The third man tried to run. Dorian shot him in the leg, walked up, looked him in the eye, and pulled the trigger. The tablet cut to black. A moment later, the room unlocked. Rachel stepped out, still shaking. Dorian stood at the threshold, blood on his shirt, smoke still clinging to his jacket. He looked at her, tired but steady. "Still want to go back to normal?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. Because for the first time, she understood. Normal was never coming back. Rachel didn't sleep for 2 nights after the breach, not because she was afraid he'd come back, but because he already had. Dorian Vale had come back from hell with a gun in his hand and death in his eyes. And when it was over, when the floor was slick with blood and the intruders were no longer breathing, he had looked at her like none of it was surprising. Like this was what protection meant in his world. Not alarms, not security codes, but execution. She tried to go back to routine, whatever that meant now. She dropped Mateo at school and made excuses to her sister about why she still needed help. Said the new apartment was closer to her work. Said things were finally calming down. She didn't believe herself, but her sister did. That was enough. Dorian didn't show up for 2 days. No messages. No camera flashes, no guards outside her door. And that terrified her more than any black SUV ever had. Because if he wasn't watching, then something was wrong. On the 3rd day, she got a call. Not from the burner. Not from the surveillance phone. Her personal cell. The one no one should have had. A woman's voice answered when she picked up. You should really answer unknown numbers faster." Rachel froze. "Who is this?" "Someone with a stake in your survival," the woman said. "Or what's left of it." "What do you want?" "Not much. Just to let you know that your protector, your Ice King, he's not as invincible as he pretends to be." Rachel didn't respond. The woman sighed. "He's been compromised, sweetheart. And if I were you, I'd pack that panic room again." Click. The line went dead. Rachel stood in the middle of the apartment, phone still in her hand. Then it vibrated again. This time, Dorian. "I need you to listen. Do exactly as I say." Her throat closed. She opened the message. "Go to the hallway. First door on the left. You'll find a black case. Bring it to the kitchen. Lock all windows. Stay low." She ran. The door was already open. Inside was a weapons case. Small, compact, military grade. Inside, a pistol, loaded. 2 magazines, a tracker, and a new phone. It lit up the moment she touched it. Live feed initiated. A camera opened, rooftop view. The skyline was moving, fast. Then a second feed, Dorian's face, blood on his collar, car windows flashing behind him. He was driving. He was injured. And someone was following him. The phone buzzed. "They're not after me this time. They're after you. I drew them out. You have 10 minutes. Rachel stared at the feed. Behind Dorian's car, 2 black motorcycles weaved through traffic, guns drawn. He looked calm, like always, but his hand was shaking. She grabbed the panic room key and Mateo's emergency bag and ran. No hesitation this time. No doubts. She just moved. Mateo was coloring on the couch when she scooped him. "Up. Panic room," she whispered. "Game time, just like before." He nodded. No questions. That was what broke her heart. How quickly he accepted it. How well he'd already learned the routine of surviving her new life. Inside the room, she locked the door. The feed was still playing. Dorian's car turned down a narrow alley. The camera feed glitched once, then caught one of the motorcycles sliding sideways in smoke and sparks. A shot rang out, then another. The second bike swerved. Dorian kicked his door open and started running. The phone's view changed again, now showing the corridor outside her apartment. Rachel stiffened. A second figure was moving toward the door. Not one of Dorian's men. No suit, no earpiece, tattoo on his neck, knife in his hand. She leaned over the panic room tablet and hit the alert button. The apartment door exploded inward 3 seconds later. Dorian stepped into the smoke, coughing, bleeding, gun raised. The intruder never made it past the threshold. 3 shots, no hesitation. The feed cut. Then the lights came back on. The panic room clicked open. Rachel stepped out slowly, Mateo's small hand in hers. The apartment looked like a war zone. Smoke, glass, blood on the walls. Dorian stood in the center, breathing hard. He looked at her, and in that moment, he looked older than she'd ever seen him. Not tired, just worn. "This was never supposed to reach you," he said. Rachel stepped closer. "You said we were safe," she whispered. "I was wrong." He didn't ask to stay, but he did. He slept in a chair by the window, gun on the table next to him. Didn't say a word all night, just watched, waited. She brought him ice, cleaned the cut on his arm, sat with him for a while in silence. It wasn't peace, it was survival, the only kind they had left. In the morning, she found a file on the kitchen table. No note this time. Just a thick envelope filled with names, photos, maps. Some of them she recognized now. The men from the breach, the woman's voice on the phone, even a blurred image of herself entering Dorian's penthouse days ago. At the bottom of the stack was a final page. There is no safe anymore, only smart. You're in this now, by proximity, by choice, by survival. And if you're going to survive it, you need to stop pretending you're just a driver. Rachel folded the file shut and walked to the window. Outside, the city was waking up again. Clean streets, coffee carts, school buses. Normal. But behind it all, she could see the machinery now. the war beneath the concrete. And she wasn't a bystander anymore. She was on the board. Rachel waited for the moment he'd finally cage her in. Instead, Dorian opened the door. Literally, physically, metaphorically. It happened on a clear morning, 2 days after the panic room incident, when her pulse had just begun to steady and Mateo had stopped, asking if the loud man would come back. She walked into the kitchen and found a slim black box on the counter. No blood this time, no bullet casings, no cryptic notes, just a passport, a plane ticket, and $100,000 in crisp, unmarked bills. At the bottom of the box, a folded card. No guards, no trackers, no phone, just choice. If you want to leave, do it now. You won't be stopped. But if you stay, understand that this ends in fire, not peace. She sat down, stared at the box for a long time. When Dorian arrived an hour later, she didn't greet him. She just looked at him and said, "Is this real?" He nodded once. "Completely. You're letting me go? I'm giving you the option to go. And if I do," his eyes darkened, "then I'll never come after you." Rachel folded her arms. "You don't seem like the type to let go." He walked past her, calm as ever, and poured himself a coffee. "I'm not," he said, "but I've also learned that keeping someone by force doesn't build loyalty, it builds resentment." She stared at him. "You don't need loyalty, you need leverage." "I needed that," he said. "I want something else." She didn't ask what, she already knew. The ticket was for Barcelona, a new identity, a place to disappear, a safe house stocked and ready. She could be gone by nightfall. The folder even had new documents for Mateo, school forms, a cover story, everything except the part where she'd have to explain it all to him. Rachel didn't make her decision until after dinner. Mateo was drawing on the floor, pirates and sea monsters. She knelt next to him and asked, "If we moved somewhere really far, would you be okay with that?" He didn't look up. "Will the quiet man come with us?" She blinked. "What?" "The quiet man," he said, "the one who makes you stop frowning." She didn't answer right away. Then she said softly, "No, he'd stay here." Her son frowned. "That's sad." "Yeah," she thought, "it is." The next morning, she stood at the private terminal. No security line, no passport check, no questions. Just a flight, idling on the tarmac, pilot waiting. She held Mateo's hand and stared at the plane. Freedom was real now. Right there. She took a step forward. Then a stewardess walked over, all perfect posture and polished nails, and handed her a note. Rachel unfolded it. "Drive safe. D." Her knees almost gave. She boarded the plane anyway, sat down, buckled Mateo in, let herself believe it, that it was over. 10 minutes into the flight, she looked out the window and whispered to herself, "I'm out." She wasn't. Barcelona was beautiful, quiet. The apartment was sunlit and simple, with a terrace that overlooked the ocean. Mateo smiled more, laughed more. He made friends fast, learned to say hola with a perfect accent in days. She taught local driving, lessons to tourists, low risk, low pressure. She let herself forget, but forgetting only works if the past isn't chasing you. It started small, a flower on her doorstep, wrong season, a man staring too long at her outside the grocery store, then a sound late at night, not Mateo, not wind. When she checked the security camera, the feed had gone dark for exactly 4 minutes, just enough time for someone to be there, and gone. Rachel didn't panic, not yet. She simply activated the number stored deep in her phone, the one no one knew about. It wasn't the burner, it was the number, the one marked D. She hit send. The call didn't ring, it just connected. His voice filled her ear, low and steady. "You ready to admit it?" Her chest tightened. "I thought I left." "You did," he said. "But they followed." "You said I'd be safe." "I said you'd be free." She exhaled slowly. "So what now?" There was a pause. Then, "You have one more move." 2 days later, she walked into her garage and found a familiar car parked beside hers, a sleek black sedan, windows tinted, driver missing, but on the dashboard, a gift box sat waiting. Inside, a phone. No note this time, just a single contact already saved. Home. She didn't call it. She just went back upstairs, sat on the couch, and stared out at the sea. Mateo sat beside her, reading. His voice was quiet when he asked, "Are we leaving again?" She hesitated, then nodded once. "Yeah," she whispered, "but this time I think we're going somewhere we were always meant to be." She packed light, didn't say goodbye, didn't send a message. She just took her son's hand and walked back into the story that had never really let her go. The new town was small, coastal, quiet, the kind of place where everyone left their doors unlocked and the barista remembered your order after one visit. Rachel Lane had no plans to stay long, but then she didn't plan to stay anywhere anymore. That kind of thinking felt too dangerous, like permanence was something she didn't deserve. Still, months passed, and she didn't run. Her house was small, just 2 bedrooms and a sunlit kitchen, but it had a garden, a view of the water, and peace. Actual peace. Mateo made friends, learned to ride a bike, started school again. His drawings no longer had helicopters or explosions, just trees, stars. His mom holding his hand. Rachel taught part-time driving lessons to teenagers with shaky hands and sleepy eyes. It was safe, uncomplicated. She was no longer being followed. No cameras in the vents, no black SUVs, no phone calls from ghosts. At least not until the day he walked back into her life. It was a Friday. The school week had just ended. The wind smelled like salt and early autumn. Rachel had a last-minute driving student, someone who called ahead, paid in cash, asked for a late afternoon slot. She waited in the parking lot like she always did, leaning against the car, keys in her hand, sunglasses on. She heard the footsteps before she saw him. Slow, steady, confident. The man who stepped around the corner wasn't in a suit. He wore a dark button-down shirt, sleeves rolled, collar open, sunglasses in his hand. But she knew him instantly, even before he smiled, even before she said a word. Dorian Vale looked casual, relaxed, but that was the trick. He'd always worn danger like perfume, subtle, lingering. He walked right up to her and said, "Still take cash rides?" Rachel stared at him, then glanced at the passenger side door. "Still trust drunk strangers?" He smirked. "Not anymore." "Too bad," she said. "That was your best quality." He stepped closer, close enough for her to smell the ocean on him, or maybe it was just memory. "I heard there's a good driving instructor in this town," he said. "She's decent," Rachel replied. "Tough, though. Doesn't go easy on reckless types." "I like a challenge." She handed him the keys without looking. "This time," she said, "you're not riding in the back." They drove in silence at first, not awkward, just heavy, like the road had to remember them. She took him down the coast past rows of quiet cottages and wildflowers curling over fence posts. Finally, she broke the silence. "How long have you been watching?" "Not long." "That a lie?" "Yes." She nodded. Figured. He leaned back in the seat, eyes closed briefly. "I thought you'd stay gone. I thought you wouldn't come. And yet, here we are." She turned the wheel with one hand, the ocean flickering through the trees on their left. "Why now?" she asked. "Because I finally believed you were building something," he said. "Not just hiding." She didn't respond. Until, softly, "I don't know what I'm building." He turned his head, watched her. "You will," he said. They parked by a cliffside overlook, the one locals said used to be a lover's point, long before time softened its edges. Rachel killed the engine. Neither of them moved. She looked at him then. Really looked. The man who once whispered death threats in her back seat was calm now, still dangerous, still capable of violence with a glance. But there was something different behind his eyes, like the ghosts were quieter now, like seeing her again silenced something inside him. "I never said thank you," he murmured. "For what?" "For not treating me like a monster." Rachel tilted her head. "I didn't treat you like anything. I just got you home." "That's more than most people would have done." She looked out over the water. "Maybe I'm not most people." "You're not." He said it with zero hesitation. Silence again. But this time, it wasn't heavy. It was warm. Healing. He reached over, slowly, and brushed his fingers against hers where they rested on the center console. She didn't pull away. "You came back," she whispered. He nodded. "Not to reclaim you." "Then why?" "To see if you'd toss me the keys." She smiled then, small, tired, but real. "You always were a terrible passenger. You always were a reckless driver." "Still am." He grinned. "Good." They sat like that until the sun sank halfway into the horizon. Then Rachel turned to him and said, "I have a spare room." Dorian raised an eyebrow. "That an invitation?" "It's a warning," she said. He nodded once. "I'll take it." Back at the house, Mateo looked up from the porch swing and grinned. "Hey," he said, "it's the quiet man." Dorian's mouth twitched. Rachel just shook her head and said, "He's not that quiet anymore." They didn't kiss that night. They didn't need to. He slept on the couch, and she slept with the windows open. And the next morning, when she woke to coffee already made and toast on the table, she didn't flinch. She just poured 2 cups. The war wasn't over. Maybe it never would be. But for now, in this coastal town with her son's laughter in the air and a man who refused to let her vanish, Rachel Lane had something she never thought she'd find. Not safety, not silence, but something dangerously close to love. Closing line. "This time," she says, "you're not riding in the back." Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.